We are just getting word that Israel had targeted Hamas leader Mohammed Sinwar, the brother of Yahya Sinwar, who is now the de facto leader of Hamas after his brother was killed by the IDF last October. This occurring in a strike on a hospital in southern Gaza today. Israel saying that Hamas was using this hospital as a command center. No indication as to whether they actually killed Mohammed Sinwar. But from your perspective, the significance of this strike happening, of course, as the president is in the region.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Look, targeted killings by Israel have had their ups and downs. On the one hand, they've had great success in debilitating their enemies, whether it's Hamas or Hezbollah, and in their view, knocking out the leadership allows for perhaps the emergence of different leadership that might have different views. On the other hand, as I heard when I was stationed in Israel years ago, without knowing what new leaders might do, Israel enters into an unknown prospect. They knew Yahya Sinwar. They had had him in jail for many years. They know or knew Mohammed Sinwar. And now we don't know what's going to emerge and how radical or not the new leadership may be.
Well, this could be interpreted a number of ways. One is perhaps this gives an out to Prime Minister Netanyahu, who's been facing immense pressure from the far-right members of his coalition for a renewed offensive inside of Gaza, going deeper and harder, even though it appears that there is more daylight between the United States and Israel, him announcing that they had killed the de facto leader of Hamas, if that does prove to be true, could give him some opportunity for a ceasefire right now and declare at least a short-term victory. Or perhaps, as I would imagine, some of these hostage family members are very concerned about what this means for further negotiations and a possible ceasefire hostage release deal. Which option do you think is more likely here?
I think Netanyahu is penned in by his coalition. On the one hand, he is feeling pressure from the Trump administration not to enlarge the invasion or to another incursion into Gaza. But on the other hand, he has coalition partners who are insisting that this war not come to an end. And so the assassination of Mohammed Sinwar may allow Netanyahu to claim a small victory, but he will face tremendous pressure from the extremist members of his coalition to continue until what they call victory, which is the complete demolishing of Hamas in Gaza.
Sticking to the president's trip in Saudi Arabia now, it was interesting to hear him say himself that Saudi Arabia will eventually join the Abraham Accords and normalize relationships with Israel in, quote, its own time. Obviously, this had been a process that President Biden had started, and it appeared was quite near completion until October 7th occurred. And since then, Mohammed bin Salman has taken a real defiant tone and saying that this cannot be completed. Normalization cannot happen until the war in Gaza comes to an end and until there's at least a pathway to a Palestinian state. So what do you make of the president even raising that today in his speech?
Well, I think what the president is doing is trying to lower expectations. Everyone has been looking at the prospect of Saudi-Israeli normalization now for several years. We know after October 7th, the Saudi requirements or demands with respect to a Palestinian state increased quite dramatically. We know that those demands are probably too much for Netanyahu to agree. And so the president, in a sense, has become realistic about the prospects of normalization, even while enhancing our relationship bilaterally with the Saudis. And so it's a way of sending a signal to Israel that it's not likely that they're going to get normalization, but also telling the Saudis that it will remain on the agenda over time and hopefully prove to be a possibility at some point in the future.
In the meantime, the real focus here has been on business investments between the United States and Saudi Arabia. The announcement of a $600 billion investment from Saudi Arabia in the United States, including some $142 billion in defense sales. The president had been hoping for a $1 trillion or anything north of $1 trillion. I think he just likes the sound and the symbolism of $1 trillion deal. But Saudi Arabia, though, is obviously extremely wealthy right now and looking to diversify, finds itself in an economically squeezed position as well, as oil prices have continued to go down. MBS did say that he hopes to get to $1 trillion. But just talk about the dynamics at play in this trip right now.
Well, I think as we saw in Trump's first administration, there were a lot of announcements after his trip to Saudi Arabia, but not many of them were fulfilled. And we may see the same pattern here. The president wants to come home with a bag full of goodies, the $600 billion, if not more, of investment, a large investment in AI in California, probably a Trump hotel in Saudi Arabia, a Trump golf course in the UAE. His son developed some crypto business last week in a conference in the Gulf. And of course, there's that 747 Air Force One gift from the Qataris. So the president wants to announce all of this, and it will make a large splash. Whether or not anything happens as a result of it will take time, and therefore is not that important in terms of the president's agenda.